Hey guys, Gary Peterson here, and today we're going to be going over the invasive pressure monitoring on the Philips MRX. So pretty much it's going to be primarily what we're going to go through is the setup of this line, not so much the interpretation of the waveforms or anything else. It's assumed you already understand those and the indications of why you would need it. Now in critical care transport, in most circumstances, we're not initiating invasive pressure monitoring. This is going to be a circumstance where you're picking up a patient and they already have an invasive line in, and you're usually continuing invasive pressure monitoring to make the patient as safe as possible from point A to point B. So this would be going out to a smaller hospital's ICU and possibly even an ED, and then taking them to a larger center. So if they have the invasive pressure monitoring in place, it's usually there for a pretty good reason. And we have the ability to continue that with certain types of monitors like the Zoll and like the Philips MRX and certain models of the LifePak. So we need to know how to do that properly. So we can turn our monitor on, and the thing that we're going to need is we need a set of fluid. We need an invasive pressure line, which is specific. It's not just any. It's not just any line. It's going to be specially packaged. They're much more expensive. The most important aspect to them is the fact that they have the transducer module connected in line. That's going to be this guy right here, okay, with this electronic connection into it, and that's giving us one continuous connection of pressure. So this way this works is it's set up very similar to a normal IV line, in which we have to hook it into usually just regular saline. It doesn't really matter exactly what the fluid is per se, although it obviously just needs to be compatible for our patient. They need to be able to accept the fluid. So usually just 0.9% saline or regular Ringer's lactate, one or the other. And then we have to have a pressure infusing bag. Not a BP cuff wrapped around the bag, but an actual pressure infusing bag. That'll become clearer here in a second. So we're going to go ahead and hook our line, spike our bag. Okay, we don't have to flood the line just yet. So we're going to go ahead and hook up our pressure infuser bag. Now most pressure infuser bags have a little hook right here to hang the bag on. You can do that. However, if you hit a bump in the ambulance, boom, it slides right out. So we try to make everything transport compatible. So we're actually going to take the loop of the bag and put it through the loop of our fluid. We hang that, and now they're pretty much locked together better. Now the pressure infuser bag has a valve on it, and it's specifically a pressure valve. You'll see that when you pull this guy, as it pressures up, it's got a green section for 300 millimeters of mercury, a red section for over 300 millimeters of mercury, and a white section for below. It's a standard pop-off valve with three-way stopcock. We open up the stopcock to be able to pump it up, and it starts pumping up. Now what I would also recommend that you do is in transport medicine we try to make everything bubble-proof, so that as we flow air, if the bag were to end up laying on the patient, we don't accidentally flow air through to the line. So what we do then is we invert it so that all of our air is at the top, now the top of our bag, and it's now going to get pushed through the line as we pump this up. And you'll notice that as I pump it up, the valve itself is going to continue to rise. The other thing that's happening is as I pump it up, it's pushing air out of the bag, and it's pushing that through the line. So now we'll come back to here. You can see the valve is rising, rising, rising. We're going to keep going until we're solidly inside the green section. So we're now at 300 millimeters of mercury. And if this was an empty line, it would have pushed all the fluid through this line and flooded this line. The next thing we need to do is we need to check our line and make sure that it has 0 bubbles in the line. This isn't like your normal fluid administration, your medication administration line. Your medication administration line, although it's standard practice to make sure that we have no air in the line, the body can absorb tiny amounts of air. So if you have a tiny little bubble here or there, or if it's an IV pump line, little tiny bubbles of air might alarm the machine, but generally they're okay. In this case, we can't have that. We actually have to have 0 bubbles of air down to almost the most minuscule bubble that you could detect by looking through the line. And we're going to get to why that's critically important in just a minute. So we've got our bag. We have it upside down to flow all the air out of the bag. If we need to, we can unspike the bag first. We can and squeeze it slightly so that it's flowing over, and then finally hook our line in. And then we want to make sure that we flood the line completely. And then we also want to make sure that the line is completely free of any air bubbles. Now this line has a self-limiter to it, so that it's not just going to flow like a this line is completely open, and you can tell that there's hardly any flow happening at all. And that's why, because this line is a restricted line, it only flows 1 milliliter per hour. That's extremely small. And there's a reason, because it's not meant to be a medication administration line. You will never use it for medication administration. It's truly only a monitoring line. So since it's not meant for flow, it's just meant to equalize pressures, we actually want that safety valve on there so that it doesn't accidentally pressure infuse a whole bunch of fluid into a patient who might already be fluid overloaded. If they need fluid, you're going to be doing that through a different access line. So in order to flood this line, we're actually going to do it by pulling the pigtail. And when we pull the pigtail, it allows fluid to flow through. Okay? All right, very good. Now when we flow through, we have to realize that we're taking, it's allowing pressure to go down. So we need to be cognizant of that. We've already lost pressure on our valve, and we need to repressurize back up to 300. All right, if you happen to go over, say we go over and we go into the red, you'll notice now as I keep squeezing, it keeps letting off. All right, but now I'm still overpressurizing in the red. The easiest way to do this is to not use the stopcock. If you move the stopcock to open it up, it will give a massive escape of pressure. The easiest way is actually to just use this pop-off valve to your advantage, see? And now I'm squarely back in the green. So I'm now at 300 millimeters of mercury. So we can go ahead and hang our line. That's done, that's ready to go. It's simply this line's going to replace the one that's currently monitoring the patient. So you're just going to do a disconnect and a reconnect, and now they're on yours. The next thing that needs to happen is we need to connect our line to our monitor. We're going to be using a invasive pressure cable, and each monitor has its own thing. This is going to be a two channel one that's connected into one. So we'll hook those up.